too.
Nice
known
and
as.
it is 7 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
There we go.
Hello.
All right. This is super exciting. The first time we have done a live of White Guilt. Let's talk about it. So you know what, you guys? White Guilt.
Let's talk about it.
Ooh, clink.
Yay. All right. So.
That's what I've been waiting for.
He has for minutes. So many minutes. Okay, so what we did want to introduce, we do want to hear a lot from you guys as well, and any questions that you have, throw them in the chat. We're going to try and get to as many questions as we can, but I wanted to talk about how this series kind of came about, and it originally started, I was just watching through some editors' reels, and I saw this hilarious short called White Guilt. And it was a sitcom, and so we have a lot of those now on our YouTube channel. But it was just really funny. It was making fun of a lot of things.
Yeah.
It was making fun of how silly we are as humans, and the small mistakes that we make, and ways that we are perhaps racist without even knowing it. And also just about people's reactions, and also about reverse racism sometimes. It's just making fun of we're human. This stuff happens, and let's have some fun.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
everybody's account, just for the heck of it. But in there's a deeper message, kind of, right?
Yeah.
So what made you think about doing White Guilt, the sitcom?
Yeah, so White Guilt, the idea of it was really exactly what you said. There are, and I think it's also important to say that in the sitcoms and all those little skits, the people recognize what they do. So we're not really making fun of anyone, right? They do a thing, or there's a social faux pas, they recognize that faux pas, and then they go to do something about it. And I thought that was really important, that everyone is a part of the joke. And so we all have seen these things, and some of us notice them, some of us don't notice them. So part of the sitcom was, hey, here's a thing that happens that people do sometimes, and the moment you see it, you're like, oh, I do that. And so I wanted people to be able to see that, and also to see the reaction that thing gets. And so, yeah, and they're funny to me. So when people do these things, people who want to, who don't ask, but just want to touch your hair. And it happens with all races and sexes and nationalities. There's all these things. But I'm black, so I did it from the black perspective, right? So, yeah, I think there are a lot of these, and this could be something that gets spread out over a lot of different areas, but I haven't run out of stuff yet. So.
But I think that's great, because I think for people to learn and to understand, and for everybody to get to a different level, we have to have fun.
Yes.
We have to make fun of it, but we also have to bring attention to it in a way that doesn't shame, in a way that makes you laugh and go, oh my God, I also do that.
Yes.
Right? But without I'm a horrible bad person, but maybe I should probably not do that.
I should work on that part.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
So I just thought it was this brilliant thing that Geraud came up with, and then I thought, but what we're missing is this conversation after it,
Yes.
Debrief.
yeah, and just what's underneath it,
Yeah.
and how do we come together, and how do we talk about it, and so that's kind of how White Guilt came about. And also, and I had heard White Guilt, this terminology,
Yeah.
I hear about it in liberal circles or these circles, and I was just like, what is that exactly, right? And then I do have so this is an interesting definition of White Guilt. So, remorse or shame felt by a white person with respect to racial inequality and injustice. But it doesn't stop there, which I think is interesting. White guilt makes real problems for black people secondary to the need for white redemption. And I thought that was interesting, because there's so much around the idea of white guilt, whether it comes from a good place, whether it comes from not a good place. And then it also, some of our reactions with white guilt is, there's people they don't even watch the thing, they just read White Guilt, and they're like, I don't feel guilty at all. And I'm like, that's not even what this is about.
Yeah.
It is not. I've never said, you're white, you should feel guilty. We've never said that.
For shame, for shame.
Like, we've never had that conversation
Yeah.
because, again, white guilt is not necessarily a good thing, but what's underneath it, what's the discussion underneath it that is the good thing that brings us to, like, things that we should talk about, I guess. So,
Well, I think the part of that definition, the ending part of that definition, is interesting because I hadn't thought of that before. We talk about this in relationships, whether they're marital or friends or work. There's a phrase that one of my friends used to say. I'm pretty sure he didn't make it up, but it was stealing my monkey. And in essence, it says, like, I am feeling crappy about a thing, or I'm upset about this thing, and then when someone's like, oh, well, there's understanding. Oh, man, I get that. I've gone through that same thing. I totally get where you are. But then there's like, yeah, but you know what? I mean, it's no big deal or whatever. Just like, you know, I started feeling that once too, and then they kind of take it.
Yeah.
Or the one I see most often is when someone would say, oh, my feelings are hurt a little bit about said thing. And then the person who hurt your feelings, now you have to take care of them. Like, oh God, I'm so sorry that I'm just the worst person. And you're just like, well, now I can't feel this thing. I have to suddenly start taking care of you. When I was the one that was. And so that last part of this definition is interesting because it is, whether it's white guilt or anything like that, it is this place where suddenly, oh, maybe I've done this negative thing, or in race as a whole, or in a history, or what have you, and this black person is feeling a certain way. Now I'm going to bemoan and talk about how terrible and what can I do and please help me, and suddenly you've sort of superseded this. And so I think that's it's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that side of it before.
yeah. So,
Can I jump in with
Please.
regards to something you said about touching your hair? I have so many hair stories. But what's interesting is I think most white people who try to touch a black person's hair or head, they don't realize the history behind it. And again, my whole thing for everything that we talk about this evening is going to be about history. Know the history behind it. Now, we are not a monolith. We all did not have the same experience, but my grandmother, who was born in 1929 and lived in Texas as a child, her experience is what she shared with me. Don't ever let a white person touch your head, because there's some kind of thing about touching an N-word's head for luck. There's some kind of thing about, you've never even heard about that.
no.
Thank you. And I bet a bunch of our viewers have not heard about that.
We're lucky?
Google it.
Yeah.
Please go. I wish we were lucky.
Wait, did I take the wrong message
The
from the
white
story?
person gets lucky from rubbing our head as if it's like a little Aladdin's lamp.
Like
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like this little Sambo thing. Please Google it, because I don't have the time here to
fascinating.
give you the whole history of it. But trust me, you will see a lot on there about touching a black person's head and about it being for luck and about it being like a little Sambo. And it's a degrading thing. So my grandmother always taught me, don't let any white person touch your head. When most people who say, what's the big deal? Why do black people get so mad when you try to touch their head? Some of us had grandmothers like mine who told, do not put your hand on my head. I'm not a pet, I'm not a dog, I'm not a little kid. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Know the history though. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You gotta know the history of that whole Sambo touching the head for luck thing. And the fact that you guys don't know it, I'm glad you don't. Because I'm sure many of our viewers don't. Google it.
Google it. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think another, like with hair, it's like the curiosity thing. Their hair is different than my hair, so I want to touch it. But then it's also, that still seems to me condescending and degrading.
It is.
I'll give you the other side of it. It doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. No, I get
Thank
that
you.
it should bother some folks, but it doesn't
No,
bother me
it
at all,
doesn't.
right?
Yeah,
Because
that's
I think that's exactly it. The people that have
agree.
tried to do it for me, right? The people who have done it to me have been like, oh my God, I love your hair, and then there seems to be an
And
appreciation.
that hand
to
just
it.
comes.
Right. And when it comes, I kind of like, oh yeah, hey, it is great hair, isn't it?
Because
Like,
we are not a monolith, like I
Yes.
just said.
Right.
We are not a monolith.
Yeah.
And another thing too, when I was younger, I used to put, and I still do, because our hair is different. So I'm not going to generalize. Some white people wash their hair to get oil and grease out of their hair. Some black people put oil and grease in their hair.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, in a predominantly white school, this white boy touched my head and I had oil oil and, stuff, conditioners and, product in my hair. And then he was like, ew, greasy kid stuff or whatever. And he tried to touch me now I said, nope. And I directed his hand right back to himself so that oil was on him. So he had to walk around with that oil stain all day.
Yeah.
But you understand,
Yes.
this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Don't touch my hair. My hair's not like yours.
Yeah.
I put stuff in my hair that you don't put in your hair. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, being a white woman with a black child.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Like, I touch my son's hair. Well, obviously
You
I
have
do my
to.
son's hair,
You have
but
to,
I
right.
love him and like I touch his face and
Of
but when I'm out, I think, ooh, does that look bad? Do you know what I'm saying? It's the weird.
And
isn't
it's
that
sad
weird
that you have to think that.
Yeah.
It's
Or
sad.
you
And I mean-
overcompensate.
It's sad.
Yeah, and so someday, like, hopefully we don't have to think about that. But like, there's a lot of people that say to me, "Oh, I love your hair," but no one has ever touched my hair.
Thank you.
No one has ever touched my hair.
Thank you for
I think
saying
there's
that.
but
You
there's
know
a
what?
part of it
I'm
that
about
is
to cry
because-
right now.
yeah.
I'm about to cry.
It's not
Thank
the,
you
it's
for
not the
saying
feel,
that.
it's the look.
It's the look.
And
Yeah.
there's
And they'll
something
probably stare at it all
condescending.
day.
Yeah.
It's
Right?
condescending about it. I'm not a child. I'm a grown woman.
Yeah.
And you just said, but they don't touch it.
No one's ever
They
touched
can
it.
compliment it from
Yeah.
afar.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ain't got to touch it.
Or
Unless it's this guy.
Or
Then
come,
you can touch it.
come to
He
Gerard.
likes to be touched.
I
That's
like being
cool.
touched.
We are not a monolith. Touch the rod.
my leg hair is different.
There you
Touch
go.
it.
Yes.
Or don't. That might be a little weird.
But but this is why we have these conversations.
Right.
Yes.
Because
Like-
no answer is 100%.
Thank
Now I'm going
you.
to say this. This doesn't help. This can not be helpful for some people who are like, do I touch it? Do I not? Here's the thing. What it all comes down to. It depends on the
Ask.
person.
Ask.
Asking is rarely.
Ask.
And I will say this. I will talk for all people everywhere. Race, sex. I'm talking for all of you.
Don't speak
Right?
for me. Don't speak for
I'm
me.
talking for you too. I'm talking for you. Here's the thing. Asking is better.
Thank you.
If anyone gets mad at you
Thank you.
asking, see, you can't drop an F-bomb. Screw those people, right? Like, I think the ability for us to grow and be better as people means communication matters, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to come to me and say, oh my God, I love your hair. Can I touch it? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you want to touch, right? I'm the asshole at this
True,
point, right?
true.
So
We're
I feel
responding that
like
way, yeah.
you should be able to,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people don't because you're like, oh God, I don't want to offend by asking. And you will offend some people by asking. But I'm saying as a people, everyone who's listening, let people ask those questions,
Ask.
right?
Just ask.
Gay, straight, black, white, everything in between, all the things in the middle, unemployed, employed, homeless, giant house. People should be able to ask you questions
Ask.
about it, and you can say, I don't want to answer, totally legit,
Yeah.
but getting mad at people who want to learn and understand you, yeah, that sort of makes you the asshole. So ask.
But also checking the energy of the person
Yes.
who's doing it. Because my husband has long locks like you,
Uh-huh.
luscious long locks like you. And
Mhm.
we have been places where white girls will just try to touch it and then try to scurry away. And he's like, did you see that? And I'm like, no, I didn't see what? See what? And then he tells me later, and I'm like, now I'm going to go to jail for grabbing this heifer's head and slamming her down for touching my man's head. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't need to go to jail for that, Jesus. Jesus.
Oh,
You
that's
understand what I'm
hilarious.
saying?
No, that's funny.
That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Just sort of like when you're not
Like,
looking.
just like a little tongue,
That is
and then try to run away.
Freaking weird. That is
That's
so
weird.
weird.
I've never heard that.
I'm
one
sorry.
before.
Like, if white guys came over and or white girls came over and were touching my, that's weird.
It's weird. Thank you for
It is
admitting that it's
weird.
weird.
It's weird.
It's weird. But again, I do think having people ask. I just, I mean, even if you're like, wow, that feels like a very creepy question, or I don't appreciate that question, like, you can say that answer. But I think asking is important because, again, the bigger picture of this show and everything else is like, how do we go from us and them to
All
everyone?
of us together.
Yeah.
Harmony. We just need harmony. And a big part of it is communication, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Asking the questions and know your history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please, not just know the history of this country and the history of what happened, years ago, 300, 400 years ago, but what just happened yesterday. There's some people who still say, oh, racism doesn't exist. Yesterday in Jacksonville, Florida, 3 black people were in a Dollar General minding their own business, and a white boy, 21-year-old white boy, came in and killed them.
I hadn't heard
And
that.
he had manifestos talking about how much he hated black people. So it wasn't like one of those things like, oh, maybe it wasn't racist. Because the first thing people like to say is, maybe it wasn't racially motivated. Oh, yes, it was. He wrote it down. Just like Dylan Roof, who killed those 9 people in that church years ago. Just like that boy who killed people in that Tops grocery store in Buffalo, New York. They had manifestos. They wrote it down what they were going to do. Now, this kid yesterday, he killed himself after he killed those 3. So we can't even get any kind of justice at all.
Yeah.
How many times do I have to read and see things about this, about people who look like me, who are minding their business? This is what I'm talking about. So we ain't talking about what happened 100, 300, 400 years ago. We're talking about what happened yesterday. What's happening somewhere in the world right now, today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to take little breaks in between.
Yeah. Well, it's horrifying. It's horrifying. And there is, that's why we have to keep these conversations going, because racism doesn't go away. It's still very prevalent. It rears its ugly head in different ways, but it keeps, but how do we keep moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a question.
Educate ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's know the history. Know what happened in Tulsa in 1921, the Tulsa massacre, because there's so many people who said, well, we don't want to live next door to you people, so go and get your own town. Okay, we did. We got our own town in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, and they burned it to the ground. It's a massacre, and a lot of people still don't know about it. Please Google that as well.
Yeah.
Lawyers, doctors, all kinds of people, thriving community, black community, because they said, you know what, y'all don't want to be next to us? We don't want to be next to you either, to be honest. We have our own community, we're doing our own thing. It was called Black Wall Street. They had thriving businesses, burned it to the ground.
Yep.
And that's not just one incident. Go to Rosewood, Google all of the black communities in this country that have been burned to the ground, that are underwater right now as we speak. I wish I could sit down and do a history lesson for you, but you gotta Google it.
Well, we can, but Google it, right?
We don't have enough time. There's not enough time. And not just the history of what has happened in this country. Know your own DNA history. I learned so much because a good friend of mine, a white friend of mine, told me, hey, let's do a play. It was during Zoom time and the downtime and whatever, but we couldn't all be together. So we were doing Zoom, and I was like, oh, I'm not checking no DNA stuff. That stuff is a scam. They're just gonna look at me, say you're black. Oh, you're African. I know I'm African. I ain't got to pay no money to know that. But anyway, I did it, and I'm glad I did, because I saw how much percentage of my own DNA is European. So how ridiculous would I be to be racist against white people and I have white blood? Know your DNA history. Know who you're related to. Anthropologists, the whole Leakey family, they say that we all are from Africa.
Yeah.
But you know what's so funny? People are like, oh no, we don't believe that anymore. You guys like to believe science when it comes to there is no God. I believe in science. Oh, the science shows that you're African. Oh no, I don't believe that science. You know what I mean? You pick and choose what
But not
science
you
you want to
guys,
believe.
Yeah.
just
Exactly.
some people.
Just some people.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
And also, we know that, probably you guys that we are talking about, not listening.
Exactly,
So
but at least you can tell your family members at Thanksgiving about this wonderful podcast, this wonderful show, White Guilt, that they need to start watching.
Tell your grandma. She'll
Yeah,
start
tell
watching.
your-
Yeah.
But I do think like DNA does help because our bodies are this wonderful melting pot of lots of different cultures and from lots of different places in the world, and it's hard to be racist when you are the other, like
Thank you.
But that's the problem is like, yeah, I wish we could remove other, because we really are all the same melting pot, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the DNA thing is a great that really
That's a
has-
start.
Yeah.
And that opens up a conversation,
Yeah.
and it opens up a conversation to know the history of what has really happened in this country, to know where we actually have police officers. Why were they even created? Why do we even have a police department? Knowing the history of what it really was to police black people. But then it ended up being, you know what I mean? It's almost like the overseers became the officers. KRS-One. Do you understand what I'm saying? But we gotta know that history. And when you know black history, you know about the white abolitionists who helped There are so many that risk their livelihoods and their lives to help teach us how to read. Just right there.
Yeah.
The abolitionists who did so much to help us escape because they knew this is a terrible system. Harriet Beecher Stowe, I'm going to go to Uncle Tom's Cabin, a book that was banned and still is banned in some countries. Read that book. I know it's an old school book talking about slavery, but Lincoln himself said this is the little woman that caused this great civil war. You know what I mean? That book opened a lot of people's eyes. Read history, learn, please.
Yeah.
Please. It'll make a difference.
Yep.
That 21-year-old boy that killed those people, I guarantee you, if he had been taught that white people are good too, even during slavery times, white people did help to get enslaved people out of their conditions, maybe he would have identified with them more.
Maybe.
And he wouldn't have had white guilt. Because white guilt, if it consumes you, can cause you to kill. Clearly.
And why do you think, do you guys know, like, why is there so much hatred? Other than
boy.
any idea?
I think we had the answer to that. We solve all the world's problems, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think money is behind it all.
I mean, some of it. Look, I think there's poor people that hate too. I think it's.
But they've been taught that the reason you're poor is because some black or brown person took something from you.
Not always. So
Many.
having been a person in the military, I know a lot of both poor, wealthy, black, white, Asian, Latino, right? And so there is, wherever it might have started, a lot of hatred and distrust really just comes from upbringing.
Yes.
And sometimes money's not involved at all. Sometimes it's not even a jealous thing. Let's be totally frank, right? In fact, I will use your story as an example. Your grandmother told you don't let white people touch your hair.
Yes.
There's a context for it, sure. That context may or may not still be the thing. A white person coming to touch your hair right now, probably not thinking, oh man, I'm going to give me some good luck today.
No, they don't
right?
know the history.
But I think the thing is that it's still a thing you learned, not about money or power or anything, right? And so I think some people that I was stationed with, for example, who absolutely disliked me, didn't dislike me because they thought, oh God, this black guy coming in here trying to take my job. Never thought anything like that. He just thought I was beneath him because that's what he learned.
That's what
right?
he was taught.
And so there's no money or politics or power. It's not oh my God, I'm worried. In fact, he was not worried about me at all because I was nothing. Like I have a specific person in mind, but there are multiples. And so sometimes there is no, I mean, it's unfortunate. Sometimes there's no lesson for some of the people that have that belief, right? And, you know, it's sort of crappy, but, you know, what's the saying? It's easier to fool a man than to convince a man he's been fooled. And so there are people who just have this belief, and it's not going away. And we're not talking to you because you're not listening to this podcast. You didn't even go to this podcast, right? So I think the big part of this, when we start talking about the hatred and the lessons to be learned, and I think remembering, and it's important, I think, for me and us to remember that too, is that the people that we're talking about or the people that we're talking to, rather, all of you, a lot of you actually, thank you. The people that we're talking to, this is a matter of sort of preaching to the choir to some extent, but some of you have questions of seeing them, right?
Okay.
And so this is folks who want to do better, who want to understand, right? This, you know, the odds are this guy, you know, in Jacksonville would never have listened to something like this. What we can hope is that we get to people near them so that from now on people aren't learning that lesson, or it's not the only voice that they are hearing in their heads, that you can go out and talk about all the things that you've heard here in other places, that you're open-minded. When you do a thing by mistake, you're like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to do that thing. And then you do something about it as opposed to living and wallowing in it. So I think that's really, you know, I don't have any belief that we're going to solve all the world's problems, but I do think we can, especially with all the people here, we can take some steps toward that, start moving the needle in this other direction a little bit, and with all of these people's help, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you watching, family, friends, foes. We appreciate you all tuning in.
Yeah.
We thank
Grandma.
you so much.
Well,
My
let's,
grandma's also
so let's get a
Irish.
question. Let's
Yeah.
also, can you check on Joey? My son. Just checking on my son. Yeah, so let's get a question. I literally cannot read that. I'm
Oh
sorry.
yeah, I put my glasses on.
I
because
will.
I'm
I'll
vain.
read it.
Just read it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it says from Bethany. Is it annoying to ask what can I do to help / how can I support you?
Love that question. No, I mean it might be annoying to some people, but again, those people are asses. That's right. I'm saying it for everyone.
Oh my God.
I will say this for me. It is probably one of my favorite questions, but there might be times that I don't want to answer. Right. So again, as we talk about, we don't want to. Any of us don't want to have to be the spokesperson for whatever group we're serving that day. Right. So as a black person, if you were to come to me and say, "What can I do to help?" I have some answers. But you also could get me on a day where I'm like, I don't know, read some stuff. And that's cool too. Then go read some stuff, but also don't stop asking the question. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite questions, so I will tell you a real example of this because, quite frankly, I think the question's brave, particularly in context. So thank you, Bethany. I was at a talk, and I think I probably spoke about this in one of our other sessions, but I was in a talk. We were talking about race in business. We were talking about getting a more diverse board of directors and things like that for your business. And one of the speakers had said, yeah, if you look at your board of directors and it is all white people or even all black people, right? You're part of the issue. And moreover, if you look at the last 10 people that you've invited to your home and they all look like you, again, part of the problem, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. So a woman raised her hand and she said, I want to be different. I want to change. But how do I do that? Because also earlier in that talk, people were saying, I don't want to be the first black person on your board. It's so much pressure, right? This is where I disagree. So this person's like, how do I invite more people? If I don't have black friends, but I know I should, what do I do? How do I bring more black people onto my board? How do I bring people in the office? And I said, yeah, just ask them. You don't have to give them the added pressure of, hey, I would like you on my board. You'll be the first black person I bring on my... Don't leave that part out, right? Hey,
Leave it out.
would you... we've been working together for a while. Would you like to come over to my house for dinner? ... Because I never had a black person in my house. Don't tell them that part, right? Just do the invite. Just reach out. And so when you want to know the things that you can do, a lot of the time, just ask, right? You can ask and say, and that's part of it. Look around, see who the people you are around with. I'll belabor this a little longer, then I'll turn it over to one of you guys. But I watched a show. I can't tell you what the show was because it came in the middle. All I know, people will probably put in the comment. There's a show where it's like people would swap family members or something.
Wife
Wife
swap?
swap?
Is it?
Wife
I don't know.
swap.
Maybe.
That's the only one ever.
Oh no, because there's there's two guys.
Oh.
I don't know, whatever, but maybe it is a wife swap thing. I don't know. Whatever the show was, all I know is that a black guy went to live in a house with a family that was racist, like outright racist, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll do this for television, but we don't like that guy like at all." And it was in the South. I remember specifically the thing that stopped me when I was walking past was like, "What the hell is this?" And it was because the guys took the black guy to like this rebel flaggy barbecue sort of thing, and so the black guy was like the only black guy there, and the family was sort of like, I remember like the kid being a total little douche, right? Little kid, and the family was like, but again, this is what he learned.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is horrible. And then I just started watching. But in the end, the white guy was like, and he said in the little interview, like the little ending interview, I've never spent time with another black person before, so all the things that I thought I knew about, like none of that was true. And if I'd ever just, like, and this is this guy, this supposedly uneducated good old boy, was like, yeah, but I just feel like like all the hate that I feel was like based on a thing that I don't know. Like if I just and he and this guy apparently. So then the little blurb at the end is like whatever these two guys' names were still talk to each other regularly, and I was like, wow, it's really just this knowledge thing. So learn, do the thing. If you don't have any black friends, make a black friend. Don't tell them they're your only black friend. Make some more. Like go hire some folks. Go to a black grocery store. There's two that you should not go to. Don't go to those grocery stores. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, don't go there. So just learn more. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and if you don't like to read, there are so many movies, like The Best of Enemies. Remember that?
Oh yeah, it's a great movie.
And it was based on people right here in North Carolina, and the black woman couldn't stand the white guy, and they whatever. But then they ended up, of course, at the end, and now they're best friends, even in their old age or whatever. Best of Enemies. Taraji P. Henson and I want to say I can't remember his name. I can't remember the white guy, but I remember Taraji P. Henson.
That's probably less than
Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you. I knew it was a Sam somebody.
Yeah.
Please see that. Make a list. To answer Bethany's thing, how can I help? How can I be supportive or whatever? Just start by educating yourself. And really and truly, if you don't want to sit and read, then there's so many movies, Hidden Figures. Just go down the list of so many different
And probably
movies.
podcasts,
Yeah.
and audio
The Great Debaters.
right?
You know what I mean? Yeah, right. And if you're driving in your car and you just want to have something, just a podcast on or something, all those things help. And then you can have conversations with your friends. And if you don't have any black friends or any friends of any other race other than your own, that's not the worst thing in the world. If you live in Idaho, you're not going to see a whole lot of people who look like June in Idaho, right? Like what?
Like good luck.
Yeah.
There's 3 black people just got all the friends in Idaho.
I'm sorry, but I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? So it may not always happen in your. And I don't fault people. I hate when I see things and people say, "Oh, I don't watch Friends because there were no black friends." Who cares? You don't have any white friends, and you're talking about you're mad at them for not having any black friends.
That Joey's the best of friends. We all can agree on that, right?
Well, first of all, Ross dated a bunch of black girls. He dated Aisha Tyler. He dated Gabrielle Union. Ross liked the sisters. So, but I'm just saying, you don't have to necessarily, your close friends that you grew up with, now you're going to throw them aside and try to find some new person from a different race.
Right.
No, we're not saying that. But we are saying at least educate yourself enough to not only think of these different races by what you see on the news. Because the news definitely is not putting us in the greatest of lights.
Yeah.
So, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I do think, though, I think it's wonderful to have friends from different religions, different cultures, different traditions.
If you can.
If you can. Because it just opens your brain. Like when I moved from my very small town in Tabor, where it was literally mostly white people, no black people. I mean, not a one in my town.
Wow.
And just very much the same. Very sweet town though, but very much the same. But moving to LA was like different foods, different peoples, different thinking, different like it was the most magical thing for me, and that was the best way for me to start thinking outside of the box and think of like. It was just having conversations with different people with different experiences. You can't necessarily always get that in a book or whatever. So if you can, I just think, and then it becomes less other. I think us and them, whatever that is. That's what keeps us apart. Is just because I don't know. This is my thinking of sometimes those people. Is for whatever reason they grow up feeling crappy about themselves, right? This 21-year-old must have felt really crappy about himself, and the only way he can feel better about himself is making someone else less than him, and taking them out and then taking himself out. So, but then that all goes to like mental health. We got to figure out mental health, and same as in terms of emotional stuff, and then just. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying, but I'm just saying there's
you're saying good stuff, and I'm hearing it.
But the getting people to not realize like that white guy on the wife swap thing or whatever, to realize like wow, there's not that many differences, or this culture, these people are not what I thought. They're much more similar than we have.
Or even if the
human,
differences are massive, but they're not bad.
No,
I think
right,
that's a big part
But
of
it's
it.
okay
Right?
to be different.
Yes. But I think as human beings, from any country, we have so much more in common
Yeah.
than we have differences. Like when you go down, like when you boil it down, you know? I don't know. Okay, another question. That was really
That was a good question.
Yeah.
Okay. So, oh, sorry. We have a question from Mary Lou. It says, I have a habit of randomly telling people of all races, I like your dress, your shirt, your hair, your shoes, your nails, etc.
That's good.
Am I wrong to have stopped doing that because now it feels weird?
No.
Keep doing it.
Compliment me. Compliment me all day. Just don't touch.
Or
You can
touch.
say everything, unless it's Geraud. He likes to be touched. You see, and you go into Whole Foods, those people like to be touched too. You can hug them up,
Oh,
do
yeah,
whatever you want to
huggers.
do.
If I'm wearing suede, like, oh my God, is that suede? And then come on over. 100%.
So please, Mary
Oh my
Lou,
God.
thank you for watching, by the way, Mary Lou.
Yes.
Please, please, please keep complimenting people. Please do all of that. I just don't understand the touching part, especially if you don't ask first. Now, if you ask first, and then Geraud says, yes, please do touch my lovely locks.
Is that how I sound?
Yes, that's how
I
you
mean, I
sound.
like it.
That's exactly how he
That's
sounds.
how
You know what I mean?
I think so too.
Yeah.
Then that's cool. Just ask.
Yeah.
Because again, we are not a monolith. I'm only speaking for June and what June has been taught. And she has been taught by people who lived in Texas back in the 20s and 30s and you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very different thing. Now, I personally grew up in New York. So when I was a kid, I didn't think of myself as a minority because I went to school with black and brown people until my mother moved me back to Texas because she was born in Texas, so she wanted me to get a piece of Texas. Thanks a lot, Mom. It was not great.
Do you have a gun?
But no, I never
Some
had a gun.
cattle?
No, I didn't have any
Oh.
cattle, didn't have any of that. But you know what I mean? So I didn't think of myself as a minority because everybody I knew was black and brown.
Yeah.
And it all depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compliment us. I'm gonna say something controversial.
Okay,
go
do
for
it. This is what
It's a
this
topic
is
that I've been thinking about, and that
Okay.
was appropriation. There's going to be some divisive thoughts on this, but
Okay.
I think of appropriation as if it's recognized. I'm an artist. If you're like, oh my God, I love this picture that you have on the internet, I'm gonna make it like the cover art of my little blog. Do it and tell everybody that it came from me. Great. I mean, if you ask permission, again, awesome. Remember,
Ask.
ask permission. But also, cool. I think of this as a compliment if you're not trying to steal it from me. There's a lot more talk going on about it, right? I'm not African, so also note that I'm talking about this as an American, black American at that, right? But I often see folks who are, if I see someone white wearing a dashiki, as long as they're not like look at the sweet ass dashiki that I stole from some, I'm all for it. I tend to think that if you were doing something representative of another culture for good, like in a good way, I love Hawaiian stuff, and so I got this cool, this great Hawaiian print. I just think it's beautiful. I personally don't really have a problem with this. Now, you start putting on a bunch of wearing headdresses and shit. Now we gotta talk, right? Feel like there is probably some line, but I was having this talk with one of my friends, and they were like, yeah, she was wearing this really cool dress that was definitely sort of Japanese leaning, and she had already had it on and was out, and then started to talk about oh God, now I feel weird wearing this thing. I was like, I don't think you should. Now, I think other people will disagree with that, and I would love to hear what folks think about it.
And I have a question too for you guys. Okay, so this is with art.
Yep.
Okay, so I started painting, and I do silly fun paintings, and I do fairies and people and girls, but then I was thinking my son's black, and I was thinking I don't want him to think I just paint white women. Because I just don't want, I just want, and then I was like, and also, the white color's just not as interesting. I can mix colors and make interesting skin colors. So then I started making black mermaids and black fairies and black or brown girls. Not all, I do it back and forth. But then someone said something to me once about appropriation and art and it's not like I made them African. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Right.
And I can't even do faces. It's all from the back because I can only do. I'm not a very good artist, but
She's
That's
very
not
good.
true.
That's
In-
not true.
in a fun way.
Please look her
But-
up. Google her art. She's very good. I have some of her
Google
artwork
her, that's
in my
creepy.
house. Google.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Google.
But no,
But-
she's very good. Okay.
So, but then I thought, can I not paint black people?
Yes, you can.
Like that was a question
It's
because I was
yeah.
like,
My
do
Lord.
people like again and again? I'm sure lots of people feel very differently, but then I just start feeling stupid, and then I was like, you know what though, dude? Like my son has to see me paint
Thank
lots
you.
of
Yeah.
colors.
Thank
100%.
you.
But is that weird? Like appropriation does get weird, and I think sometimes people really do it, and I think some people don't know that they're doing it, and then I think sometimes like people get so afraid of doing it, then they do nothing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think, I say do it. I'm a role player.
What?
What does that even
I
mean?
play
That
little Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
I play
okay, thank
City
you.
of Mist.
Clarify,
Everyone
please.
watching that?
So that could be so many
No.
different things.
You know what? I don't have to clarify. Role playing. It's all good.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that, so if you watch people who do like actual play podcasts who are doing role playing, right? The best GMs tend to be like voice people, right? There's something that I note that I personally think is a little insulting, and that is that, for example, if you're a white game master and you'll have characters with all sorts of different voices. They'll be Irish, they'll be English. You'll do a little, you'll do French. Oh God, don't do Africa. Don't do anything from Africa. Don't do any sort of Latinx sort of voice. Like, why can't you do those voices, right? And so now you start building this fantasy Tolkien-esque sort of world that has no color representation because you're afraid of being a white person speaking with, again, it's all fantasy and you're playing a role. And now, if all your black people are thugs, that's a different thing. We're not talking about that, right? We're just talking about elves with bows.
Well,
right?
first of all, British black people sound like British black people. British white people
Absolutely.
sound the same.
They sound British.
Like
That's
they sound
British.
British.
That
Right.
Idris Elba? Actually, his voice is silky. Sorry, I went to a place.
Calm
Anyway,
down
sorry.
there, tiger. But yes.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I love all of this. The appropriation thing, the first thing I think of is Halloween. And the first thing I think of is the costumes that people wear for Halloween. And a lot of celebrities got into trouble because Orange is the New Black had just come out and everybody wanted to be Crazy Eyes, the part played by Uzo. And she was
Oh.
amazing. But then they would go so far as doing the brown face or the
Oh.
black face.
Yeah.
Now, if you just do the costume, the Orange is the New Black, uniform, prison uniform, and you do your hair like that, you could have been automatically like, oh, you're just being Crazy Eyes. That's cool. But as soon as you put the brown face, the black face, like when I dress up for Halloween, and I do, check my IG, Elizabeth June NY. When I dress up for Halloween, I'm Wonder Woman, but I don't white my face. I don't have to white face. You see the costume. You know who I am. There's no
Right.
reason for me to whiten my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing about
I think we
that
talked
gets
about that.
tricky.
I was Zorro one year for Halloween.
Beautiful.
To me,
Right.
everyone else thought I was Black Zorro. I was
Oh,
like,
see,
no,
why you gotta be
just
Black
Zor-
Zorro.
just
See,
Zorro,
they gotta
man.
play you. They try
Just
to
Zorro.
play
And that's
you.
one of the white guilt things. It's one of the
Right,
little
but
skits,
that's the
like,
thing.
Black
Well, that's the whole thing
Yeah.
with the Little Mermaid, the whole brouhaha that happened with
Yeah.
the Little Mermaid right now. But y'all realize it was an animated character. He's not like,
Also
what
a
I'm saying?
mermaid.
And also a mermaid.
I know.
So there you go. But all these things to say, I think it really depends. There's a lot of Native Americans who don't want people wearing Native American stuff at all. And I stopped doing that. Even though one of my percentages in my DNA is Cherokee, but we ain't gonna go there. Do you understand what I'm saying? But
There should be a
even
number.
that-
Like, and
There
I've
should
heard
be.
somewhere
There
where
should
someone
be
has
a
a
number.
joke. I don't remember who
Right,
it was.
right.
I'm not trying to steal any comedian's joke, but there's a comedian out there that was like, look, and I think it was specifically about a Native American. They're like, look, if you're at least 7% Native American, then you can wear a headdress. Knock yourself out.
But see,
But
that's
it's like,
the thing.
right?
It's
So
a
there's
funny
some.
joke, but at the same time, they get real serious
Right,
about it, and I
absolutely,
get
as
that,
they
and I
should.
respect it. So that I'm just gonna pull back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop wearing my Native American things that I used to wear and all that kind of stuff. Because leave it alone. It just goes back to like one of our other episodes when you were saying you don't like people calling you that B word. Like a lot of girls like to call each other B word, and a lot of just just a lot of people in general like to throw that B word, like B word, you this, B word, you that, or whatever. Not everybody likes to be called that. So the minute you tell me I'm not cool with that, I stop doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the appropriation thing. You know what I mean? When I see white people having a big afro or having dreadlock wigs that they put on those little hats that have like little Jamaican-looking colored hats. See, she's laughing because you've seen it. And it has a little dreadlock wig and like, Emon, sit down. You're about to get knocked down. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but they make
That's
you
a problem. But it makes you laugh, and that's cool. And you know, you're a different kind of guy.
I don't know what that
You
means,
let,
but I'll take it.
No, in a good way. You let things roll off your back.
It's
You're
true.
not the kind of
Yes.
person that, you know, like, hey, you trying to make fun of my hair? You don't even take it personally if you see a white person with the A man.
I got 2
thing.
F's and I keep them in my back pocket. I'm saving them. Trying to save them for a little while. So.
There you go.
Try not to
Saving
spend
the
them.
F's.
Yeah,
Saving the
save 'em.
F's. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
And
totally.
it's
Absolutely.
good that,
Absolutely.
that Melissa is sitting in between a person who is laid back and a person like me who's militant, who's about to kill everybody. You know what I mean? It's good that you have two different, you know what I'm saying?
I
So we
love
can
it,
talk
though.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be, you know, because we are not a monolith. I'm going to say that 10 times in this
Yeah.
show. We are not a monolith.
Yeah.
So, to go back to the appropriation thing, I think it's a matter of, you can dress like a character that's normally a different culture of your own, but you don't have to do the black and brown face.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't
much.
have to do the whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah,
Like
our
I
Venn
said.
diagrams crossed
Well,
right
and
there.
also again, that
That's a
goes
spot.
to history,
Yes.
right? And knowing
Yeah.
what blackface used to be.
Thank
like,
you.
all, you know, history.
Google that. History, blackface,
Yeah.
please. Yes.
Lord.
Mammy and all that kind of stuff. What was that
Oh,
thing?
and
Al
also red
Jolson.
face. Look
Al
up red
Jolson.
face too.
And
because
red
that's-
face. And call
That's
some.
also some
Yes.
stuff. Holy crap.
And that's why they had, what was that, I'm terrible at sports. What was that football team, the Washington Redskins? They had to
Yeah.
change their
Yeah,
name
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything, right? It was
Oh,
like
the
serious.
big brouhaha.
I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
You gotta change your name.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's we have a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
question.
Okay.
I think this is a good one. It's from Lane. Was there anything that has surprised you about doing this series?
Well, I'll say
Yeah.
when we first started, I thought, oh, we're gonna be preaching to the choir, like we're gonna be, and then when we put it up on YouTube, I don't know, the algorithms, the white guilt. Sometimes you put white privilege in there. We rarely get to our choir. Like oftentimes
yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
get to like it goes to the super I don't know if it's white supremacists, but super sensitive white people.
Yeah.
Like the comments that we've had have been fascinating. I mean, really interesting. That not all of them. They've been really. There's been some really interesting back and forth. But there's also just been some like super racist. I don't even think they watched it all the way through or knew what like. So I guess that surprised me. Like where I was really hoping to hit more people in between, and
Yeah.
also not only that, but our choir, because I think our choir can get into the white guilt and help me feel better, which is not helpful. So that's, I guess our audience has surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Like what?
No, the audience for sure. I've gotten to hear some of the comments, and I knew there'd be some.
Yeah.
It's the internet, right? So if you think that you're not going to get some flame out there, then you've not seen the internet.
Yeah.
But some of them are brutal.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those 2 F's I have in my pocket.
Yes.
I've almost pulled them out. So
Yeah.
like, what? Who is?
Wow.
Okay, I don't know this person. Let them.
Yeah.
They live in there as the whale. They live in their closet. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise. What was not a surprise, but I feel like it definitely needs to be said because it has happened a lot actually. And Megan has got some responsibility for that. We might make her show up on camera here a little bit. We've also gotten comments from people who are that in the middle, who have said a thing like, I have a real question. You're like, oh Lord, here it comes. And then they have a question, and that question is a little racist on some parts. But when they get an answer, they're like, oh, and like people sort of take the answer. And you can see that they're like actually learning a thing, and that is really cool. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that has also happened a little bit. That's been very cool.
Yeah, and Megan, as we're talking about, Megan does all her social media. She does a lot of things. She films a lot of stuff and edits a lot of stuff. She also answers a lot of the comments, and so she's been super helpful
She's amazing.
about that. Yeah.
Go Megan.
Surprise for you.
Well, see, because I'm kind of like just a guest star that you guys have invited me in, so I really haven't seen all of the comments, like the brutal comments and so forth.
Yeah.
What I was surprised about is that I learned so much just watching the two of you before you guys even brought me in. I really did. I love that Monopoly scenario that you gave about you can never really catch up if you start later. You know what I mean? That to me blew my mind. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
So I've learned so much just from watching you guys, and I'm honored that you guys, have me to be a part of this because I got lots to learn. I'm still learning.
Learning a bunch from you too. It's actually cool.
I
That's very
appreciate
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, another question.
So from Michelle, we have, what would be a quote unquote better paradigm or a new paradigm of thought moving forward? Is it okay to ask questions and think about conversation as connection versus guilt or shame?
Oh man, that's well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yeah, a wholehearted yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think those, again, we talked a little earlier, Michelle, the questions matter. And if you ask the questions of someone who doesn't want to answer, that is cool. They don't have to answer. Don't let that guilt you into not asking questions
Of
again,
others.
right?
Yeah.
Keep asking, keep figuring it out. Much like this guy we talked about with the swap thing. It is that knowing that makes a difference. And also I will say this, because this is, I think, equally as important. Not that black people are victims, but what I mean by this is that it is very rare, if ever, can the victim group get out of any situation on their own. It takes people outside of that group. Black people would still be slaves today if it weren't for some white people
Yes.
coming out and speaking up and doing this fight, right? So
and hiding us in their homes.
yes, absolutely, right? We know this from various things, from World War II and going all the way back, right? So I think when we start to talk about whether you keep asking those questions are really important, but I think they're also important because as you're starting to learn more, this is one of those, I just saw this somewhere, one of the answers for women is if a guy in your office says this off-color sexist joke, that the correct response is to say, I don't get it, explain that to me, and make them have to explain their crappiness to you.
Oh my god,
Right?
that's brilliant.
Right? And so there's this idea that when grandma says this horrible thing, instead of everyone like clamming up like, oh Lord, there's grandma, like, hey grandma, why you think that? Like, what happened to you that makes this thing? Like, and I think asking not just a different race what the thing is, but your own people, whether it's race or sex or whatever it is, like, oh, haha, I see you said that. But why did you say that? And make them have to stand up and say, right? Because I think when people are held accountable, they're less likely to just, every time I say a crappy thing that no one responds to, eventually it's easier to say that crappy thing and believe that crappy thing, right? Someone somewhere has to interrupt that cycle, and that's your job and our job.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing to do. Keep asking those questions of everybody.
That's really interesting. And one thing I did learn ages ago, one thing that you said that I thought is interesting is it's okay for us to feel uncomfortable. Because it's uncomfortable asking a question and not knowing exactly what we should do and figuring it out, and not always getting the right response, or people maybe not liking our question. Like, it is okay for us to be a little bit uncomfortable, and to be able to sit in that and keep going and ask more questions and put yourself out there rather than trying to get people to make you feel better. Like, it's okay to feel a little crappy right now and uncomfortable because we're in a weird situation, and the only way to get through is for me to step up and ask questions and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that is not always going to feel really good.
Yeah, in fact,
Right.
I dare say that you're wrong if you're asking the question in hopes that the answer will make you feel better. That's
Yeah.
not what this is about. It's about growth. And maybe that growth makes you feel better, but really it's about being better people and understanding other people better, right? And so, you know what? You make a mistake, suck it up, man. Sucks. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna we are going to slip up, and we're going to slip up a bunch. And the more we ask these questions, the more people we might offend, but also you get better, right? And you're getting through those things. And again, sometimes it's the person that you ask, just not the right person. But yeah, you should keep doing it.
Yeah.
And we have to keep talking and stop making assumptions. I made a crazy assumption to some of my white friends because somebody was saying, I stupidly said, oh, they're not going to know anything about Usher songs, the singer Usher. I'm like, no, and honey, my white friends knew way more Usher songs than I did. They schooled me, and that it was a silly thing, but just something that these people I've known for 20 years. That I was surprised that they would hit me with a bunch of Usher songs. I'm like, oh snap, I don't
Like,
know
do you know
that.
this one? You're like, what? No.
I'm black. I'm supposed to know the Usher songs. No, I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They knew more than I did. I know it seems silly, but it's just about assumptions that we sometimes make, and they make assumptions that I don't know about Barry Manilow. I'm a fan of Low. So
Oh my God, I
I
love
think
that.
there's a full discography of Barry Manilow songs.
Gross.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to say gross.
So you can say gross all you want, but
Barry Manilow, if you're listening,
let me tell you something. Barry Manilow is the man. So
I can't say anything because I like
he came
Queen.
up with, but guess what? Not only did he do amazing songs, but he did amazing jingles. You deserve a break today at McDonald's. That's Barry Manilow.
Are you
I
defending
am
him or
telling
not
you.
defending him?
I'm telling you, he is the culture. Y'all don't know about
We
do it
know.
for the culture.
I
Barry
love
Manilow.
it.
I'm a fan of him. You know what I'm saying? So those are the kind of things people looking at me might not know about me. You know what
I
I'm
didn't
saying?
know it.
So there you
It
go.
makes me a little sad.
There you go. It's fun.
I like that though, but yeah, so not making assumptions
Yeah.
and asking, even if it's hard to ask or feels weird.
Yeah.
Okay, another question.
Yeah.
What do we got?
No more questions?
No more questions. Really?
A few
And
more.
perfect timing.
Okay, well we have so we can wrap
Oh,
it
yeah.
up because we've got a couple more. And if you have a last minute question, you can throw it in there and we'll make sure that we get it. But like, what's something? Why don't we just all say like something that we want to leave people with, like to go forward and get better, not get better, but just like how do we continue this conversation and get better as humanity? I guess that's my.
That's a good question.
I'll go first because
Yeah.
you guys are the show. I'm just a little invited guest, and I'm again very happy to be here.
We love our invited guests.
Thank you so
Sweet.
much. I will say it really, as corny as this is gonna sound, it's about love. It's about self-love, and then you can love other people, and then you can just lead with love. Once you do that, anything someone else says to you, even if it feels offensive or whatever, you just look at them and say, did you mean this, that, because this is how it came across to me. As opposed to, what? I can't believe, you know what I mean? Lead with love. Lead with grace. Give the person a chance to explain. And if, after they explain, they really did mean that racist stuff, then you know what, it's time to just kind of educate, or it's time to step away. And I let people know. When people say, oh, how come I can't say the N-word? You guys say it in your raps or whatever. You're grown. You can say whatever you want. You're not going to say it in front of me more than once, because as soon as you say it in front of me, I'm picking up my satchel and I'm out. So it's not about what you can and cannot do. It's what I'm not going to allow myself to be exposed to. So lead with love, lead with grace, ask questions, and I think we'll be kind of okay.
Love that. Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my gosh. What can
Now you
I
gotta
say?
follow that.
I gotta follow that. But I think, I love that. I think leading with love. But I guess as the white person here, like in terms of white people, is not trying to get your guilt, not trying to make yourself feel better, but to allow yourself to be okay with feeling uncomfortable so that you can ask questions, so you can step up and be an ally, so you can make mistakes. Like, you're gonna screw up and you might offend somebody. Like we offend other white people all the time too, right? Like we offend people because we're humans. But like stepping up and being vulnerable and asking questions and putting yourself out there, and then also stepping up when other white people or other people are being racist, and stepping in and allowing that to not be okay. You know, like if someone says something in my house that I'm not okay with, they are not allowed to be in my house.
Amen.
You know, so whether that's family or not,
Yeah.
you know, but stepping up and speaking out, and there we go, that's the 8 o'clock, but and being okay with that being hard, I think, is where I'm at.
I say it by the bell.
Yeah,
No, you just
no.
gotta say it.
You gotta.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is to note for everyone listening and all your friends of all races that we could do the mirror of this show called Black Guilt, and it will be almost exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Same questions, same answers, right? So I think it is important, not that anyone who might be feeling this made it this far into the show, but if you were ever like, man, why white people got to do all the work? You do not, right? Black people got to do this same work. Latinx population got to do this same work. Straight people got to do this work. Everyone needs to be doing this, right? We could call this anything, right? And I think the questions, the answers are all going to be the same. And I think that's really important for folks to know. Yeah, this applies to all of us.
All right.
you.
So white guilt. Let's keep talking about it.
Keep talking about it.
We're talking about it.
Cheers.
And also, let's keep drinking about it.
Yeah, think about it. Right.
I feel like we
Right.
should have talked about that.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, from hanging out with us. We'll probably do more lives because these questions are super important.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And then, like, we're gonna, this will go up on our YouTube channel. Please share it with people, because I feel like the more people see it, the more people, can just like get a different point of view. I think it's super helpful. And if you have not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, that notification button,
I
and
think
stay
the
tuned.
kids say smash that button.
Smash that button. Smash it. Do whatever you can.
Do
Just
whatever. Hit the
it.
button, man.
Hit that button. But yeah, stay tuned. There's a lot more coming with this show and a lot more other series. So stay tuned. We will let you know. All right. Thank you, guys.
Wow, that was really good, guys.
That was wonderful.
Are we off?